Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Krunk here, and Yzma's out of the castle here for a little while, so just gonna, I'm sitting down here with some story time, and figured gonna go ahead and read a book of mine, read a book that a buddy of mine, Morgan Freeman, read for you guys last time, The Story of the Eye. I'm gonna go ahead and gonna pick up where he left off at. So let's go ahead and get this started. I'm going to start with the last paragraph that he read. So, let's go ahead and do that. Marcella exclaimed, Please, don't cry. I want you to kiss me on the mouth. Simone, for her part, stroked the girl's lovely, smooth hair, covering her body with fond kisses. Meanwhile, the sky had turned quite thundery, and with nightfall, huge raindrops began plopping down, bringing relief from the harshness of a torrid, airless day. The sea was loudly raging, outroared by long rumbles of thunder, while flashes of lightning, bright as day, kept brusquely revealing the two pleasured cunts of the now silent girls. A brutal frenzy drove our three bodies. Two young mouths fought over my ass, my balls, my cock. Oh, God. But I still kept pushing apart female legs, wet with saliva and gum, splaying them as if writhing out of a monster's grip. And yet that monster was nothing but the utter violence of my movements. The hot rain was finally pouring down and streaming over our fully exposed bodies. Huge booms of thunder shook us, heightening our fury, wresting forth our cries of rage, which each flash accompanied with a glimpse of our sexual parts. Simone had found a mud puddle, and was smearing herself wildly. She was jerking off with the earth, and coming violently. Whipped by the downpour, my head locked in her soil-covered legs, her face wallowing in the puddle, where she was brutally churning Marcel's cunt, one arm around Marcel's hip, the hand yanking the thighs, forcing it open. Chapter 2. The Antique Wardrobe. That was the period when Marcel developed a mania for breaking eggs with her ass. She would do a headstand on an armchair in the parlor, her back against the chair's back, her legs bent towards me, while I jerked off in order to come in her face. I would put the egg right on the hole in her ass, and she would skillfully amuse herself by shaking it in the deep crack of her buttocks. The moment my jism shot out and trickled down her eyes, her buttocks would squeeze tightly, and she would come while I smeared my face abruptly into her ass. Very soon, of course, her mother, who might enter the villa parlor at any moment, did catch us in our unusual act. But still, the first time this woman stumbled upon us, she was content, despite having led an exemplary life. Sorry, I just got done eating lunch. Yeah, just got done eating lunch. I'm reading this shit. Anyway. To gape wordlessly, so that we did not notice a thing. I suppose she, too, was flabbergasted to speak, or was too flabbergasted to speak. But when we were done and trying to clean up the mess, we noticed her standing in the doorway. Pretend there's no one here, Simone told me. And she went on wiping her ass. And indeed, she blithely strolled out, as though the woman had been reduced to a family portrait. A few days later, however, when Simone was doing gymnastics with me in the rafters of a garage, she pissed on her mother, who had the misfortune to stop underneath without seeing her. The sad widow got out of the way and gaped at us with such dismal eyes and such a desperate expression that she egged us on. What? In such a desperate expression that she egged us on. That is to say, simply, with Simone bursting into laughter, crouching on all fours on the beams and exposing her cunt to my face. I covered the gun completely and jerked off while looking at it. More than a week had passed without our seeing Marcel. When we ran into her on the street one day, the blonde girl, timid and naively poised, blushed so deeply at seeing us that Simone embraced her with an uncommon tenderness. "Please forgive me, Marcel," she murmured. "What happened the other day was absurd, but that doesn't mean that we can't be friends. I promise we'll never lay a hand on you again." Marcel, who had an unusual lack of willpower, agreed to join us for tea with some friends at our place. But instead of tea, we drink quantities of chilled champagne. The sight of Marcel blushing had completely overwhelmed us. We understood one another, Simone and I, and we were certain that from now on nothing would make us shrink from achieving our ends. Besides Marcel, there were 3 other pretty girls and 2 boys here, the oldest of 8 being not quite 17. The beverages soon took effect, but aside from Simone and myself, they were not as excited as we wanted them to be. A phonograph rescued us from our sorry about that. A phonograph rescued us from our predicament. Simone, dancing a frenzied Charleston by herself, showed everyone her legs up to her gun. And when the other girls were asked to dance solo in the same way, they were in too good a mood to require coaxing. They did have panties on, but the panties bound them kind of laxly, without hiding much. Only Marcel, intoxicated and silent, refused to dance. Finally, Simone, pretending to be dead drunk, crumbled a tablecloth and, lifting it up, she offered to make a bet. Offered to make a bet. "Oh, looks like that's over. Well, that was quick. Anyway, that's about all we got for today. Oh well. Fuck it, We'll go ahead. We'll go another. That's what we'll do. Okay. So, just give me a moment here. See if I can't find a game. 25, not bad. Not bad at all. Okay. We can do that one. Alright, as we were. "I bet," she said, "that I can pee into the tablecloth in front of everybody." It was basically a ridiculous party of mostly turbulent and boastful youngsters. One of the boys challenged her, and it was agreed that the winner would fix the penalty. Naturally, Simone did not waver for an instant. She richly soaked the tablecloth. But this stunning act visibly rattled her to the quick, so that all the young fools started gasping. "Since the winner decides the penalty," said Simone to the loser, "I'm now going to pull down your pants in front of everybody," which happened without a hitch. When his pants were off, his shirt was likewise removed, to keep him from looking ridiculous. All the same, nothing serious had occurred yet. Simone had scarcely run a light hand over her young friend, who was dazzled, drunk, and naked. Yet all she could think of was Marcel, who for several moments now had been begging me to let her leave. "We promised we wouldn't touch you, Marcel. Why do you want to leave?" "Just because," she replied stubbornly, a violent rage gradually coming over her. All at once, to everyone's horror, Simone fell upon the floor. A convulsion shook her harder and harder. Her clothes were in disarray, her ass stuck up in the air, as though she were having an episodic fit, but rolling around at the foot of the boys. She had undressed. She mumbled almost inarticulately, "Piss on me. Piss on my gun," she repeated, with a kind of thirst. Marcel gaped at the spectacle. She blushed again. Her face was blood red. Then she said to me, without even seeing me, that she wanted to take off her dress. I half tore it off, and hard upon it, her underwear too. All she had left was her stockings and belt. After I fingered her gun a bit and kissed her on the mouth, she glided across the room to a large antique bridal wardrobe, where she shut herself in after whispering a few words to Simone. She wanted to jerk off in the wardrobe, and was pleading to be left in peace. I ought to say that we were all very drunk, and completely bowled over by what had been going on. The naked boy was being sucked by a girl. Simone, standing with her dress tucked up, was rubbing her bare cunt against the wardrobe, in which a girl was audibly jerking off with brutal gasps. All at once something incredible happened. A strange swish of water, flowing by a trickle and a stream from under the wardrobe door. Poor Marcel was pissing in her wardrobe while jerking off. But the explosion of totally drunken guffaws that ensued rapidly degenerated into a debauch of tumbling bodies, lofty legs and asses, wet skirts and cum. Guffaws emerged like foolish and involuntary hiccups, but scarcely managed to interrupt a brutal onslaught on cunts and cocks. And yet soon we could hear Marcel dismally sobbing alone. Louder and louder in the makeshift pissoir that was now her prison. I guess that's how you say that word. I'm not sure. Half an hour later, when I was less drunk, it dawned on me that I ought to let Marcel out of her wardrobe. The unhappy girl, naked now, was in a dreadful state. She was terrible and shivering feverishly. Upon seeing me, she displayed a sickly but violent terror. After all, I was pale, smeared with blood, my cloths askew behind me in unspeakable disorder. Ill bodies, brazenly stripped, were sprawled about. During the orgy, shards of glass had left deep bleeding cuts in the two of us. A young girl was throwing up, and all of us had exploded in such a wild fits of laughter at some point or another that we had wet our clothes in armchairs or the floor. The resulting stench of blood, sperm, urine, and vomit made me almost recoil in horror, but the inhuman shriek from Marcel's throat was far more terrifying. I must say, however, that Simone was sleeping tranquilly by, her belly up, my hand still on her beaver, her pacified face almost smiling. Marcel, staggering wildly across the room with shrieks and snarls, looked at me again. She flinched back as though I were a hideous ghost in a nightmare, and she collapsed in a germade of howls and grew more and more inhuman. Astonishingly, this litany brought me to my senses. People were running up. It was inevitable, but I never for an instant dreamt of fleeing or lessening the scandal. On the contrary, I resolutely strode to the door and flung it open. What a spectacle! What a joy! One can readily picture the cries of dismay, the desperate shrieks, the exaggerated threat of the parents entering the room. Criminal court, prison, the guillotine were invoked with fiery yells and spasmodic curses. Our friends themselves began howling and sobbing in a delirium of tearful screams. They sounded as if they had been set afire as live torches, Simone excluded with me. Yeah, that's about it. So, made it through that. Wasn't too bad. Join us again next time. We're gonna continue this lovely novel, The Story of the Eye. I'll see you guys next time. I love you all. This is Krunk, signing off. You have a wonderful day.
And that, everybody, is how you end your day for Call of Duty. 32-3, I massacred those guys. That just wasn't even fair.